Well, it was an extraordinary day in the US where the president's son, Hunter Biden, was found guilty of 3 federal gun charges and now faces possible jail time. Now, of course, the verdict comes as his father, Joe Biden, prepares to debate Donald Trump later this month. So let's break all of this down with Sky News contributor Kosha Gada. Kosha, talk to me about this trial. I don't think anyone was really surprised that Hunter was found guilty. I mean, he was more or less convicted by his own text messages.
Indeed, it was a unanimous decision by the jury verdict, as is required for felony cases. And I think it took them 3 hours to arrive at that decision, which suggests that there wasn't all too much deliberation. But from a legal matter, actually, in Hunter Biden's defense, I will say that this case, if it gets appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court, which is possible, is going to go to the heart of a constitutional issue. Again, because with Delaware state law and other federal laws, because this was brought as a federal case, there are statutes that the prosecution use that say it's illegal to buy a gun if you're addicted to substances. That's what this whole case was about. However, there is nothing in the Second Amendment, famously what the U.S. is known for, among other things, that has that stipulation. And so it very well could turn into a defense on constitutionality. And politically, that is a little bit ironic because, of course, the left, where Biden comes from, is typically against those arguments and the Second Amendment and all of that, and yet that may be the very defense that this could get overturned on appeal.
Yeah, I was laughing as you said that because it is ironic. The Democrats relying on the Second Amendment and fighting for the right to own guns. It's a delicious irony. The left-leaning media in the US responded to this verdict, I suppose, as we thought they would. Have a look.
It's not a surprise, and yet there is something unbelievably tragic about the trajectory of this case.
This is a tragedy for the Biden family, precipitated in large measure by the death of Beau Biden. For 8 years, the Attorney General of Delaware. Not the favored son, but the more prominent of the 2 sons.
This is one of those cases where I don't think it's brought if Biden's not president of the United States. You know, this is one of those things, if Biden had chosen not to run in 2018, I doubt Hunter Biden's ever prosecuted.
The guilty verdicts that the jury has handed down on Hunter Biden were verdicts not just on his conduct under law, but on his collapse into drug addiction and the consequences of it. So many American families understand that, and now the first family has gone through it as well.
So, Kosha, what do you make of the media coverage? I mean, there's a lot of sympathy for Joe Biden and you really got a feel for the man and he's a wonderful father. And that's very much the way that at least the left-leaning media are spinning this.
Wholly predictable. You know, Hunter Biden, I think, in many ways is a tragic figure. He is a hot mess. There's no question about that. And a lot of that got aired out in this case and beyond from his laptop and everything else. But there is something tragic about him and the role that he's played in that family. And I guess on some level, on a human level, you can't sympathize with that. But the other tragedy, really, which the media will not cover, and so that it's up to the other side to get cut through on this, is what has not been prosecuted as it relates to Hunter Biden, but more importantly, his linkage to Joe Biden. And that is all the financial related allegations that are out there about how this family has earned something to the tune of $20 million. We know this from the bank records that have been subpoenaed by the congressional bodies. $20 million from the most troubled hotspots in the world: China, Kazakhstan, Russia, Romania, Turkey, places like that. And nobody knows what the family business is. Were there FARA violations, which other people like Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign leader back in 2016, has been put in jail for that, for not registering as a foreign agent, which is against the law in the U.S. None of these people registered for that. And the worst thing is, has it really colored foreign policy and the president's policy towards Ukraine and funding and all of that because they've been beneficiaries of money? Those are the real crimes that were deliberately allowed to expire. The statute of limitations is expired on that, so they didn't bring the cases. That's the bigger tragedy in all of this. And this thing is sort of like a consolation prize, I think, this current case for Hunter. And again, I think, as I said, it may very well get overturned on appeal anyway.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the most interesting piece of evidence from the trial was not the revolver that Hunter Biden bought, but the laptop, which in the court of law was confirmed as actually, it wasn't Russian disinformation, it actually did belong to him. But that really doesn't go anywhere, that laptop and all the information that was on it.
Yes, that's a big piece of irony in this. We talked about the reliance on the Second Amendment defense. And then the other big piece is that very infamous laptop from hell that we know was suppressed. 51 intelligence agencies came out and put a statement out before the last election saying it's Russian disinformation. The media ran away with that narrative. And it's so funny that that very government, granted it's another part of the government, but it is ultimately the United States government who is prosecuting Hunter Biden in this case, entered that as their key evidence in this case that just got adjudicated, and that was the very same government that said it was Russian disinformation back in 2020. So that irony also is not lost on many. And the question is how much of that gets aired out into the public domain, and how much does it swing voters, and all of that remains to be seen.
What happens practically now with Hunter Biden? I mean, obviously he'll face sentencing. It's a 25-year jail sentence potentially, is it not?
Yes, I think that's the technical max that he could receive over here from this. And the judge has not set the date yet for sentencing. Typically, it would be in 2 to 3 months. He also has another case on the docket that is scheduled to go to trial in September around tax evasion and avoidance. So that's another thing that practically comes into play if he were, now that he is a convicted felon on these charges, that could make the sentence for the next case more severe, because if you already have a record, the sentence could be more severe versus in this case, he has no prior record. So all of that is coming to fruition in the next couple of months. And of course, we're going to be in a fever pitch in terms of the presidential campaign as well, which I'm sure will factor into the judge's decision and those technicalities also.
Kosha, just one last question. Does any of this make any difference to Joe Biden in the polls and his campaign?
It's hard to say. I think by and large, 80-90% of the electorate has baked all of this into the cake, whether it's the Trump verdict, which we have seen hasn't really made much of a difference in the polling, or this one. The only place where maybe you see a little bit of impact is I think some of those swing voters who are just busy, the suburban moms, people like that who aren't in the weeds of the stuff. These cases do get a little bit of cut through, like the headlines that we're seeing today and anything else that airs out in the September case that's coming up around tax evasion. It goes to the character of the family and by extension, President Biden for his role, broadly in this. Maybe it sways a few people, but I don't think it's going to be anything super material because everybody has sort of baked the stuff into their assessment of the candidates.
Yeah, I reckon Joe Biden's got bigger problems than his son's gun conviction. Kosha, thanks for joining me tonight.